Welcome to Bargain Bin Saturdays, where I take a look at movies I picked up out of the bargain bin. And today we're going to be looking at Merlin and the War of the Dragons, and I'll be up front and saying that I'm not going to write a script or anything. This is going to be off the cuff, so I guess if you want to avoid spoilers, I should just give my general impression of the movie first, and it's watchable. I'm not going to say this movie is any good, but it's watchable. I mean, it's not terrible or bad or anything, it's just okay. With that being said, I guess there are issues I should discuss about the movie. They'll probably give away spoilers if you're really worried about that sort of stuff for a movie by the Asylum, who makes cheap knockoff titles of big-name blockbuster series or TV shows. And this movie is definitely meant to be a cash-in on the Merlin TV series on the BBC. Asylum's other works include movies such as Transmorphers, a ripoff of Transformers. And they also were behind Mega Shark vs. Giant Octopus, so they're not known for making movies of good quality. In fact, they're usually known for making low-budget schlock, paced on better on big titles, with more money behind them. In fact, I'm not sure what the budget for this movie was, but from what I've read, I can guess it's probably well below $1 million. It's well below $1 million. Well, maybe not well below, but it's definitely $1 million or less kind of movie. So the CGI work in this movie is just terrible. I'll also have to say that there's really no blood on the weapons when people get stabbed, or the clothes are too clean, or they don't look dirty after a fight. Story-wise, though, this movie basically tries to tell a story about the early years of Merlin, when he first became famous and all that, so it's sort of loosely based on the Arthurian legends, I guess. I say loosely, because there's two ladies of the lake in this movie. Maybe it's because there's different legends and they have different names, or different personalities. After all, the myths surrounding these characters have probably changed and been edited over time. But the story itself basically revolves around Merlin and this other apprentice being under a mage, and he doesn't really get a name. He's just called the Mage, sort of like Robert Picardo in Inner Space is just called the Cowboy. He's basically known as by his title, but it's actually a rather famous actor who was born in Germany, whose name I don't know how really to pronounce, but you'll probably recognize his face, if not his name. And story-wise, well, Merlin's the good apprentice and the other apprentice is evil. I mean, what else is there to say? He goes around tricking people to drink dragon's blood so they'll turn into dragons, and then commands them to crush people, or for him to steal a book of secrets so he can become the most powerful mage ever. He's also the child of a demon, much like Merlin is. In fact, I'm surprised they even brought up that plot point from the stories of Merlin, that Merlin is the child of a demon. And yes, it is something in the legends there, so at least it's based on something. Though they don't really identify what kind of demon Merlin's the child of, and some of the legends usually seem to specify that he's the child of an Incubus. And if you're not sure what an Incubus is, and I may be pronouncing its name wrong, it's basically like a succubus, only it's a male demon instead of a female sex demon. And they're basically known for holding people, basically if you suffer from sleep paralysis like I do once in a while, just very isolated short bursts. Basically a incubus is known for holding you down, either while you're starting to fall asleep or when you wake up, because your muscles will be paralyzed during sleep paralysis, because you basically enter like a REM state of sleep. So your body basically shuts down all the muscles except those in your eyes, and you're utterly helpless. But I really don't want to get into sleep paralysis. You can look up that on your own time. But as the movie progresses, Merlin eventually goes to get Excalibur from one of the ladies of the lake, as well as has to go back to them to get access to the Book of Secrets. in order to learn how to kill a dragon. I don't know why he needs a spell on how to kill a dragon, though, which is what he asks the book for, because he has a sword that can do it. With a scabbard that can protect him from being injured from taking injuries, regardless of what he does. I mean, he kills a dragon while it's riding on its back, and then crash lands in a forest, yet is somehow whole afterwards, without his clothes being really even damaged. I also find it strange how all the characters seem to refer to Merlin as if he's famous, but he hasn't done anything yet to be famous for. I mean, until this movie's over, you don't even see him really do anything, and I don't even know if you can say he did anything, because the way the movie ended was just terrible. In fact, there's two things about the ending that are terrible. The first part is it ends on a cliffhanger, which is never a good thing, because this movie doesn't have a follow-up apparently, and it probably never will. So you have a cliffhanger ending for a movie that's never gonna get a sequel. That's just never a good idea. The second part about the ending that's terrible is that the final confrontation shows the evil mage being more powerful, but Merlin doesn't defeat him through the use of magic or skills with his blade, because he was taught swordsmanship by the mage also. Because according to the mage, why do something with magic if you don't have to? But instead, the evil mage, whose name I can't really remember and don't care about, is killed by trying to use Excalibur against Merlin. But Excalibur in this movie can't be wielded by people that are evil. If they try to wield it, it will take the ultimate price upon them. So the evil mage tries to use Excalibur and then gets killed for it, which makes the ending very anticlimactic, to say the least. And another thing you'll probably notice about this movie is that the special effects are terrible. The low budget shows itself in the CGI. Of course, it's probably made even more ridiculous when you consider the fact that the armies for both sides are probably made up of at most 10 or 20 people, who basically get sent charging in a quarry, which they always go back to whenever they have a fight scene, is in the quarry. Regardless if fights have been going on for days or whatnot, they'll still be in the quarry. Even when they retreat, apparently the army doesn't advance onto their old position. They just sit there and wait for them to come back. It just doesn't make any sense. It's the little stuff that really nitpicks and hurts this movie. But I guess it wouldn't be the Asylum if it didn't have all these flaws attached to it. But as I said, this movie is watchable. It's not a bad movie. It's not really a good movie. If you're into the fantasy stories and Merlin, you'll probably like it well enough to at least get some enjoyment out of it, even if you would find it hard to recommend this movie to other people, because definitely doesn't stand out in a good sort of way. There are just better movies associated with the character. And that's really all I got to say about Merlin and the War of the Dragons, to be honest. It's a watchable movie, but not recommended.